From the very first night, there was something different about the way Coda lay beside Anna's bed. Not just the watchful stillness of a loyal dog, but something heavier, like a soldier standing guard. He refused to leave her, even when coaxed. He ignored his own comfort, barely eating, barely sleeping, as if tethered to a mission no one else could see. Maya thought it was just devotion, the way German shepherds often bond fiercely with the ones they love. But as days turned into weeks, his urgency grew. Whimpers at midnight, paws on the bed frame, a low growl, not at an enemy, but at the silence itself. And then came the night Maya finally listened. The night when Coda's instincts revealed a truth that doctors had missed, a truth that would turn into a fight for Anna's very life. This is the story of a bond beyond words, of a guardian who refused to rest, and of the night a mother realized her dog wasn't just family. He was fate. Morning always began the same way for Maya. The alarm clock buzzed at 6 a.m. Sharp. Though she usually woke seconds before it rang, her body trained by habit. She would slip quietly from bed, careful not to disturb the small figure still curled beneath the quilt in the adjoining room. For a few minutes, she allowed herself to stand by the doorway, watching Anna's soft breathing, the rise and fall of her tiny chest, the way strands of hair tumbled across her face. It was in these moments, before the rush of code, deadlines and servers, that Maya let her heart rest. By 6:30, the kitchen filled with the low hum of the coffee maker and the muted clatter of dishes. Her routine was precise, almost mechanical. A mug of coffee in the exact same chipped cup, one slice of toast, half an egg for herself, and a glass of milk with a smaller plate set aside for Anna. Structure was survival for Maya. In a life marked by deadlines and server outages, predictability was the one gift she could control. Coda, the German shepherd who had come into their lives 2 years earlier, already sat by the sliding glass door when Maya entered the kitchen. His frame was powerful, his posture erect even in stillness. He was unlike the playful pets she saw in neighbors' yards. Every inch of him carried the discipline of years spent as a police canine. Even in retirement, his instincts did not soften. When Maya glanced his way, his amber eyes followed hers with quiet recognition. He did not beg for food or bark for attention. He simply waited, ears flicking at the smallest sounds beyond the walls. A sentinel, silent but constant. Maya found comfort in that. In a life where she often felt stretched thin between work demands and the demands of being a single mother, Coda was the steady rhythm she could lean on. By 7:15, the house stirred awake. Anna's small feet padded down the hall, dragging her blanket like a cape. At 6 years old, she was full of contradictions. Endless curiosity paired with a shy quietness, stubbornness softened by a smile that could undo Maya in an instant. She rubbed her eyes and slid into her chair, greeting Coda with the same ritual each morning. A pat on his broad head, a whispered, "Good morning, boy," as if he were another family member at the table. And in truth, he was. The mornings passed in a blur of backpacks, hair ties, and quick reminders. Maya checked the server logs on her laptop, even as she tied Anna's shoes, muttering about updates while her daughter hummed a tune only she seemed to know. Coda shadowed their every move, not intrusively, but attentively, as though every shift of their routine carried weight. When Maya opened the front door to usher Anna out, he lingered at the threshold, scanning the street with that same disciplined posture. Neighbors sometimes commented on how serious he looked, how unlike other dogs he seemed. Maya usually smiled politely, though inside she wondered the same. At the office, Maya became another version of herself. Screens glowed across the open floor. Colleagues hurried past with coffee and chatter, but she remained anchored to her station. Systems engineering was precise work, unforgiving, exacting. She spent hours tracing lines of code, adjusting parameters, fixing what others broke. In that world of logic and algorithms, emotion had no place. And yet, even in the middle of it, her mind often drifted to Anna. Did she eat her lunch? Was her laugh as bright as it had been this morning? She never said it aloud, but Maya lived in two worlds at once, the structured, high-pressure corridors of her company and the fragile, quiet sphere of her daughter. The balance was exhausting, yet she bore it with the resilience of someone who had no other choice. At 5:45 p.m., the cycle reversed. The office lights dimmed, the traffic thickened, and Maya's focus shifted entirely to home. She often arrived weary, the weight of numbers and problem-solving still pressing against her temples. But the moment she saw Anna's drawings scattered across the coffee table, or heard the clumsy rhythm of her piano practice drifting down the hallway, the heaviness loosened, and always, Koda was there. He would greet her not with leaps or barking, but with a steady gaze, a quiet step forward, as though confirming her safe return. Sometimes she imagined he was counting them, ensuring no member of his little pack was missing. It was a habit formed in his working years, she suspected, carried over into this quieter life. Evenings unfolded in familiar patterns. Dinner was simple: pasta, soup, sometimes just cereal when deadlines stretched too long. Anna chatted about school, while Maya nodded, her mind juggling both her daughter's words and the mental checklist of tasks yet undone. Koda lay beneath the table, his presence grounding them both. Later, when dishes were stacked and bedtime neared, Maya watched as Anna curled up against the dog's thick fur while reading picture books. The sight stirred something wordless in Maya. Gratitude, perhaps, or the ache of knowing that in Koda, her daughter found a comfort that Maya could not always provide. And yet, beneath all the predictability, the mechanical mornings, the disciplined dog, the careful order of their lives, there was an undercurrent Maya could not name. A faint tension, like a string pulled taut, but not yet snapping. She ignored it, telling herself it was only the stress of single motherhood, of holding a career together while raising a child alone. Still, when Koda's eyes lingered too long on Anna, or when his ears pricked at sounds only he seemed to hear, Maya felt a flicker of something she couldn't shake. It was calm, yes, but it was the kind of calm that precedes a storm. For Anna, the world was made of colors and small wonders. On the living room floor, the carpet became a canvas where she scattered crayons like treasures, red for the sun, though sometimes she insisted the sun should be purple. Blue, not just for the sky, but for the way water rippled in her memory of the creek behind their house. Every drawing began with the same detail: a big golden-brown dog standing taller than the people around him, eyes like amber marbles. She always drew Koda first, as if the rest of the picture couldn't exist without him. At 6 years old, Anna saw life not in routines, but in moments stitched together. Giggles in the hallway, forts made of blankets and chairs, the thrill of hiding beneath them with a flashlight that cast shadows like monsters on the wall. In these forts, Koda was her knight. She draped a towel across his back and declared him her horse, whispering secrets into his ears as if he could truly understand. And in his silence, in the steady rise and fall of his chest as he lay beside her, she felt understood. Other children had stuffed animals. Anna had Koda. Bedtime was her favorite. Maya would read to her in a soft voice, pausing whenever Anna interrupted to ask questions about why the moon followed cars, or why princesses always needed rescuing. But it was Koda who completed the ritual. He never climbed onto the bed, though he easily could. Instead, he stationed himself at the foot, head resting against the frame, eyes glinting in the dim glow of the nightlight. Anna would reach down her hand, and Coda would press his muzzle gently into her palm. It was their signal. I'm here. You're safe. Sometimes she whispered things to him she never told her mother, about how the dark made her feel small, or how she worried other kids laughed at her quietness in school. Coda listened, as dogs do, without judgment. His ears twitched, and his breathing was steady, a lullaby that carried her into dreams. There were afternoons when she built castles from shoeboxes, lining them with scraps of paper and dolls. Coda would sit nearby, a watchful giant, never disturbing her tiny kingdom. If one of her towers collapsed, she laughed, blaming the earthquake of his tail swishing. He seemed to smile, though his mouth never curved the way humans did. And yet, beneath Anna's carefree play, there was something curious, something only a child might notice without naming. Coda didn't just stay near her. He shadowed her. If she walked from the living room to the kitchen, his nails clicked softly on the floor behind her. If she padded down the hall to the bathroom, he stationed himself outside the door like a guard at a castle gate. Even when she hid under blankets, giggling, his nose would press against the fabric, waiting for her to peek out. Anna thought this was normal. She believed every child had a guardian who knew when they felt lonely or when their stomach fluttered the way hers sometimes did. He knows, she told her mother once, tapping her tummy lightly. When it feels funny, he makes it better. Maya had smiled at the innocence of it, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face, but Anna remembered the seriousness in Coda's eyes at that moment. One rainy Saturday, Anna built a fort in the living room, so elaborate it swallowed half the space. Chairs, blankets, and pillows formed winding tunnels that only she and Coda could enter. With a flashlight and a notebook, she pretended they were explorers. She scribbled words in her shaky handwriting. Secret cave, magic dog. When thunder rolled outside, she curled closer to Coda, pressing her cheek against his warm fur. The storm didn't frighten her, not with him there. Sometimes, Anna imagined Coda had lived many lives before hers. A knight's horse, a soldier's companion, maybe even a wolf who had chosen not to be wild anymore. She didn't know he had once been a police dog. Maya never told her the details. But children carry instincts of their own, and Anna sensed something in Coda that was older, wiser than the playful dogs she saw in the park. At school, she would draw him during art class, making him larger than life, with wings stretched across the page. Her teacher once asked, "Is this your pet?" Anna had shaken her head. "No," she said with certainty. "He's my protector." The word slipped from her lips naturally, without knowing how deeply true it was. In the quiet of the evenings, when Maya worked late on her laptop at the kitchen table, Anna would curl against Coda on the rug. She traced patterns on his fur, her eyelids heavy, the world shrinking to the steady rhythm of his breath. She didn't see the way his eyes stayed half open, ears tilting at every sound beyond the walls. To her, he was simply hers. There were moments, though, that made her pause. Once, when she had a stomachache after lunch, Coda pressed his nose against the same spot for minutes, licking gently, as if soothing her. She giggled at the ticklish feeling, patting his head. "You're silly," she told him. But later, as she drifted off to sleep, she whispered, "Thank you." For Anna, life was simple. Crayons, forts, bedtime stories, and the unwavering presence of her dog. She didn't notice the shadows of worry in her mother's eyes, or the tension in Coda's watchfulness. She only knew she was loved, in two different ways, in her mother's warm hugs and in Coda's silent devotion. And though she couldn't explain it, Anna sometimes felt that Coda knew things before anyone else, like when she was about to cry, or when a storm was about to break. His nearness was a comfort she didn't question. To a child, love needed no explanation. Tuesday afternoons were usually predictable. Maya's schedule at the company was relentless, hours broken into tidy blocks of meetings, coding reviews and troubleshooting. But that day, a sudden system outage forced the team to shut everything down. For the first time in weeks, she found herself stepping out of the office before the sky turned dark. She drove home with a quiet thrill fluttering in her chest. Maybe she could surprise Anna, maybe even catch her mid-fort building, or with crayons still scattered across the floor. As she pulled into the driveway, the house stood silent, its windows glowing faintly with the late sun. Unlocking the door, Maya slipped inside and expected to hear laughter, or the patter of small feet rushing to greet her. Instead, she was met with stillness. "Anna?" she called softly, her voice echoing in the hush. Usually, Anna answered before the last syllable had left her lips, but the house stayed silent, only the hum of the refrigerator filling the air. Maya's heels clicked gently against the hardwood as she moved down the hallway, a prickle of unease stirring at the base of her neck. The door to Anna's room was ajar. A soft golden glow spilled through the crack, the kind of light that came from her bedside lamp. Maya pushed the door open gently and froze. There on the small bed, Anna lay curled on her side, pajama top ruffled and lifted slightly above her belly. Beside her, Coda was bent low, his broad frame hunched protectively. His tongue moved with deliberate slowness, licking the same spot on Anna's stomach again and again. The room was silent, except for that quiet, rhythmic sound. For an instant, Maya's breath caught in her chest. The sight was oddly tender, yet unsettling. Time seemed suspended. Coda's ears twitched when he noticed her, but he didn't stop. His gaze remained focused on the spot beneath his tongue, as though nothing else in the world existed. Anna turned her head lazily, blinking up at her mother. "Hi, Mommy," she whispered, her voice dreamy, as if the scene unfolding was ordinary. Her small hand reached up to tangle in Coda's thick fur. Maya forced a smile to mask the tension that tightened her chest. "Sweetheart," she said softly, stepping into the room. "What's going on here?" Anna giggled, the sound light and innocent. "He does this when my tummy feels funny. It makes it better." Kneeling beside the bed, Maya brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead, her pulse still thudding in her ears. "Your tummy hurts a little?" Anna shrugged, unconcerned. "Sometimes, but Coda always knows." She pressed her cheek against the dog's side, comforted. Maya's gaze shifted back to Coda. He was still licking with that same patience, his amber eyes half closed but intent. There was nothing frantic in his movements, no playfulness. It was measured, purposeful, too purposeful. She stroked Anna's hair, trying to steady her own breathing. "Dogs have funny habits sometimes," she murmured, though her words felt thin, unconvincing. Coda paused for a moment, lifting his head just slightly. His eyes met Maya's. It wasn't the gaze of a pet caught misbehaving. It was sharper, steadier, almost a challenge, a message she couldn't decipher. Then, just as quickly, he lowered his head again and resumed, ignoring her presence entirely. A shiver ran down Maya's spine. Later that evening, over dinner, she tried to laugh it off. Anna, delighted, recounted the moment, explaining in her simple way how Coda heals her when her tummy feels odd. Maya nodded and smiled, but each word etched itself into her thoughts like a warning. That night, after Anna fell asleep, Maya lingered in the hallway outside her daughter's room. She could see the faint glow of the lamp under the door. She could hear the soft shift of Coda's paws as he settled onto the floor by the bed. Normally, that sound brought comfort. Tonight, it only tightened the knot in her chest. Maya slipped into her own room, but couldn't rest. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing echoes of Anna's words. He always knows. The phrase replayed, stirring something she tried to bury under rational explanations. Dogs are affectionate, she told herself. Sometimes they fixate. It's nothing. But even as she repeated the thought, another voice whispered louder. What if it isn't nothing? She rose in the middle of the night, padding barefoot down the hall. At Anna's doorway, she found Coda awake, his head low but eyes wide open, glowing faintly in the dark. He didn't blink when she entered. His gaze stayed locked on the small rise of Anna's stomach beneath the quilt. The house was still, the world outside wrapped in silence, but Maya felt the weight of something unspoken pressing in. She reached down, resting her hand on his fur. Normally, he would lean into her touch, tail thumping softly. But tonight he didn't move. He remained frozen, focused on the child breathing softly above him. Maya's whisper broke the silence, trembling despite herself. Coda, what do you know that I don't? No answer came, of course. Only the dog's steady, watchful presence and the faint sound of Anna's breathing. When Maya finally pulled back, retreating into the hallway, her heart carried with it a flicker of fear she could no longer dismiss. The house was calm, yes, but it was the fragile calm of a place holding a secret it wasn't ready to reveal. The days after that Tuesday began to feel different. At first, Maya convinced herself she had imagined it, that odd heaviness in the room when she had found Coda licking Anna's stomach. Dogs had quirks. Maybe it was nothing more than affection. But soon the changes in Coda's behavior grew too clear to dismiss. He no longer drifted from room to room the way he once had, content to nap in the sunlit kitchen or lie at the foot of the couch. Instead, he fixed himself to Anna like a shadow stitched to her heels. If she sat in the living room, crayons scattered across the rug, Coda lay inches from her side, his head resting on his paws, amber eyes never leaving her. If she padded down the hall toward the bathroom, his nails clicked on the wood floor as he followed, stopping outside the door, body stiff, ears pricked. He never entered, but he never left either. Maya watched the change with a mix of wonder and unease. She had lived with this dog for 2 years. She knew his rhythms, his calm, disciplined nature. Retired police canines carried themselves differently than household pets. They were watchful, yes, but Coda had always been steady, quiet, with a certain restraint that made him easy to trust. Now that restraint was unraveling into something else, something urgent. At bedtime, the shift was most stark. Before, Coda would curl at the foot of Anna's bed, his presence a silent comfort. But now he stationed himself so close his body pressed against the frame. If Anna stirred or shifted in her sleep, his ears twitched immediately, his head rising. When Maya peeked in late at night, she often found him awake, amber eyes glowing faintly in the nightlight's halo, staring at the small mound of her daughter beneath the blankets. One Saturday morning, Anna decided to build a fort out of blankets and chairs. Maya sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee, watching her daughter's messy joy. She noticed how Coda squeezed himself into the cramped tunnels Anna created, unwilling to remain outside even when the space barely fit his broad body. Anna giggled, tugging at his ears playfully. "He's my guard dragon," she announced proudly, and disappeared under the fortress with him. Maya smiled faintly, but the words stuck in her mind. Guard dragon. That was exactly what he looked like. Too large, too vigilant. His body coiled with a tension that didn't belong in the comfort of their living room. The first time Maya truly felt the change was at school pickup. Usually, when she walked Anna to the gate, Coda would pause at the yard, sniff around, perhaps greet the crossing guard with a polite wag of his tail. But now, he sat rigid by the gate, eyes pinned on the building. When the bell rang and children spilled out, Coda rose instantly, muscles taut, gaze sweeping the crowd until it landed on Anna. Only then did his posture soften. Other parents noticed. One mother laughed nervously. He looks like he's about to arrest somebody. Maya forced a smile, tugging Coda's leash, but her chest tightened. This wasn't the calm, retired partner she had come to know. This was a working dog on duty. Only the duty was Anna. At home, his intensity deepened. When Anna left the room, even briefly, Coda's body stiffened. His head whipped toward the doorway, ears sharp, eyes narrowed. If she disappeared upstairs, he followed, every step precise, as though escorting someone through hostile territory. When Anna shut her door behind her, Coda settled outside, nose pressed to the crack at the bottom, waiting. One evening, Maya attempted to coax him outside into the yard to play. She tossed his favorite ball, the one that once sent him bounding across the grass like a younger dog again. But this time, he barely glanced at it. His eyes flicked back to the hallway where Anna's room was. His body refused to follow the lure. Maya stood in the doorway, ball clutched in her hand, a chill washing through her. That night, she sat at the edge of her bed, laptop closed, staring into the dim hallway where Coda's silhouette blocked Anna's door. He was more than a guardian now. He was a sentinel, caught in some invisible battle she couldn't see. Anna, of course, was oblivious. To her, it was simply more proof of his love. She giggled when he followed her to the bathroom. He's waiting to make sure the monsters don't come, she whispered conspiratorially. When she slept with her small hand dangling from the bed, Coda pressed his muzzle into her palm until her fingers curled around his fur. Maya wanted to believe it was innocent. She wanted to accept Anna's interpretation, that this was loyalty, affection magnified. But deep inside, something gnawed at her. She had seen dogs guard before. This was not guarding. This was vigilance, pushed into obsession, as though Coda were responding to a danger no one else could sense. The silence of the house grew heavier with it. Even the ordinary sounds, the refrigerator's hum, the creak of the floorboards, seemed amplified by Coda's constant awareness. His ears twitched at every noise, his head lifting, gaze darting, always circling back to Anna. Maya began to notice how thin the line was between comfort and unease. Yes, she felt grateful that Anna had a protector so steadfast, but at the same time, watching him glued to her daughter's side sent ripples of fear through her. Fear of what it might mean. Fear of what he might already know. One evening, as she tucked Anna in, she lingered longer than usual. Coda lay beside the bed, eyes wide open. Anna smiled sleepily, curling against her pillow, one arm draped over the quilt. Maya bent to kiss her forehead, inhaling the scent of shampoo and childhood. Then, as she turned to leave, her gaze collided with Coda's. His eyes were not soft. They were fierce, almost pleading. It was as if he were trying to speak through them, to warn her, to beg her to see what he saw. Maya paused in the doorway, her hand tightening around the frame. The house was quiet, but inside her chest, Her heart pounded loud enough to fill the silence. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Why now, Coda? What are you trying to tell me?" The dog didn't move, didn't blink. He just stayed there, vigilant, unyielding, a guardian who had no intention of leaving his post. And in that stillness, Maya felt the first chill of dread slip into her bones. By the end of that week, Maya had grown accustomed to the sound of Coda's paws following Anna everywhere. What unsettled her wasn't the sound itself, but the silence that came with it, the kind of silence that pressed against her ears, making her hyper-aware of every breath, every movement, every shadow stretching across the walls of their home. She tried, of course, to make light of it. At dinner one evening, when Anna giggled about her bodyguard following her into the bathroom again, Maya forced a laugh. She told her daughter stories about other dogs she had read online, Labradors that fetched groceries, poodles that danced in competitions. "Coda just likes to keep you company," she said, her voice casual, her smile too wide. But beneath the thin veil of humor, her chest was tight. Each time she glanced at Coda, lying stretched beneath the table, head low but eyes trained unblinking on Anna, her pulse gave a nervous thud. Logic whispered relentlessly in her mind, "Dogs get attached. He's adjusting to a new routine. Maybe it's separation anxiety." She clung to those explanations like lifelines, repeating them silently, when the unease threatened to overtake her. After all, she was an engineer. She believed in causes and effects, problems with solutions. Emotions didn't fix systems, rational thinking did. And yet, her instincts gnawed at her. The way Coda sat, muscles taut, whenever Anna left the room. The way his gaze seemed to pierce through the very air around her daughter. It was not mere affection. It was vigilance, sharpened by urgency. And Maya, no matter how she tried, could not unsee it. Late at night, after Anna had drifted into dreams, Maya lingered in her own room, laptop forgotten on her desk. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of Coda shifting outside Anna's door. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, chasing rationality, while her gut screamed otherwise. "You're being dramatic," she scolded herself. "You're tired, stretched too thin. You're reading into things." But then she remembered that moment in Anna's room, Coda licking the same spot on her stomach again and again, his eyes filled with a strange insistence. The memory clung to her like a burr, refusing to be brushed away. Sometimes she rose from bed, padding barefoot down the hallway. She would find Coda exactly where she expected him, pressed against Anna's door, head lifted, body still as stone. When she whispered his name, his ears flicked, but he didn't take his eyes from the crack beneath the door. It was as though the world behind that door was the only one that mattered. Maya leaned against the wall, arms crossed against her chest, listening to the faint rise and fall of her daughter's breathing. She wanted to trust her logic. She wanted to laugh this off, to believe she was only overreacting. But each time her gaze fell on Coda's unyielding stance, the laughter died in her throat. One evening, after tucking Anna in, she sat at the edge of her own bed with her phone in hand, scrolling through article after article. Dogs sensing illness in humans. Pets detecting cancer early. The headlines blurred together, each story echoing the same strange truth. The dogs could perceive changes no human eye or ear could. There were accounts of dogs pawing at their owners until they went for tests, of them sniffing obsessively at moles that turned out malignant. Maya closed her phone, setting it on the nightstand with trembling hands. She pressed her palms to her face, whispering into the darkness, "No. No, it can't be that. And yet, a mother's instinct often ran parallel with fear, not logic. Beneath the engineer's training, beneath her rational explanations, the primal whisper grew louder. Something is wrong with my child. She thought back to small moments she had brushed aside. Anna rubbed her stomach at dinner, shrugging when asked if she felt sick. The pale look in her cheeks after a long day of school. The way she tired more quickly on the playground. They were subtle things easy to overlook in a busy life. But now, strung together, they felt like beads forming a pattern she didn't want to recognize. The next day, as she stood at the school gate waiting for Anna, Maya watched Koda's posture tighten. He stood rooted, body taut, scanning the stream of children until he found her daughter. Only then did his muscles release. Watching him, Maya felt her throat tighten. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a quirk. This was duty, something deeper than she understood. That night, Maya tried again to dismiss it. She curled on the couch, watching Anna laugh at a cartoon, her small hands clutching a blanket. Koda sat by her side, eyes locked on her, as if the colorful chaos on the screen didn't exist. See? Maya muttered under her breath. It's fine. Everything's fine. But when Anna leaned forward, clutching her belly for a fleeting second before resuming her laughter, Maya's heart stuttered. And when Koda's head lifted instantly, gaze drawn to the same spot, a shiver passed through her. She pressed her hands into the couch cushions, forcing her body to remain calm, to breathe. But inside, unease bloomed like a bruise. Later, lying awake while the house slept, Maya whispered to the darkness, "What if I'm wrong? What if I wait too long?" Her words dissolved into the still air. Outside Anna's room, Koda shifted, claws clicking softly against the floor as he resettled. The sound was steady, rhythmic, like the ticking of a clock she could no longer ignore. Maya told herself it was just a test, nothing more. She needed proof that what she was seeing was nothing beyond ordinary loyalty. Maybe if she forced a little space between Koda and Anna, the dog would adjust, settle down, act like himself again. That's what she told herself as she stood in the soft glow of Anna's bedroom lamp one quiet night, her hand tightening around Koda's collar. Anna was already drifting into sleep, her breath slow and even beneath the quilt. Her small hand dangled from the edge of the bed, fingertips just brushing the floor where Koda usually lay. Tonight, Maya whispered to the dog in a low voice, "Come on, boy. Just for a little while." Koda resisted immediately. His paws dug into the carpet, his body weighted with reluctance. His amber eyes flicked to Anna, then back to Maya, confusion glinting there. She coaxed him softly, tugging gently, until at last he rose, silent but unwilling. Step by step, she guided him out into the hall. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, silence thickened like fog. For a breath, Maya thought perhaps it had worked. The house was still. She pressed her palm against the wood, steadying her nerves. Then came the first sound, a low whimper, muffled but trembling. Koda pressed his nose against the door, snuffling as though trying to reach through to the other side. When the barrier held, the whimper deepened into a cry, raw and pleading. Maya crouched down, stroking his fur in an attempt to calm him. "Shh. It's okay. She's fine. Just sleep here tonight." Her voice cracked despite her best effort, but Koda wasn't listening. His body leaned hard against the door, chest heaving, paws scratching in short bursts that rattled the frame. The sound was not frantic. It was desperate. slow, dragging scrapes across the wood, carrying a sorrow so heavy it made Maya's throat tighten. It was as if each mark was a message. Let me in. She needs me. When she tried to pull him back, his body stiffened, planted firmly as though the hallway floor itself anchored him. Then, from deep in his chest, a howl rose, low, broken, a sound unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It wasn't the bark of a guard dog or the call of an animal outside. It was grief made sound, aching and human in its depth. Anna stirred inside the room, murmuring softly in her sleep, though the howl did not wake her fully. Maya pressed her back to the wall, her hands gripping her knees, heart pounding in her ears. Her rational mind struggled for purchase. This was just separation anxiety, she told herself. Dogs cried when they wanted company. But no matter how many times she repeated it, the sound cut through her like glass. Minutes stretched, each one heavier than the last. Koda's cries softened into a steady whine, his nose pushing again and again at the crack beneath the door. Finally, his body slumped to the floor, pressed against the wood, as though proximity alone might be enough. He stayed there, rigid, eyes fixed on the door that separated him from Anna. Maya slid down the wall opposite him, burying her face in her hands. Exhaustion and fear battled inside her chest. She wanted to believe she had control, that logic would prevail. But looking at him, this powerful, disciplined animal unraveling before her, something inside her broke. At last, she stood and twisted the doorknob. The door creaked open. Koda surged forward, almost stumbling in his haste to return to Anna's side. He pressed himself against her bed, chest rising and falling in sharp, uneven breaths, as though he had run a great distance. His nose nudged her hand until it curled instinctively into his fur. Only then did his body ease, though his eyes remained wide, still burning with that strange urgency. Maya lingered in the doorway, her knuckles white against the frame. She felt a wave of shame for even attempting it, for forcing a barrier between them. Yet deeper than that, shame was something colder, darker, fear. Fear of what this meant. This wasn't the affection of a pet longing for his companion. This was something heavier, sharper, like a silent alarm only he could hear. She stepped back, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, Koda's desperate panting echoing in her ears. For the first time, she allowed the thought to fully form. What if he's trying to tell me something I can't see? The question lodged like a splinter, and in that moment, Maya felt fear settle into her bones, not fleeting, but permanent, like a shadow that had finally found its place in her home. The first time Maya noticed it was subtle, easy to brush off, the way one might excuse a skipped meal after a long day. She poured Koda's kibble into the stainless steel bowl, the clatter echoing across the kitchen tile. Normally the sound brought him trotting in, tail steady, posture calm but expectant. That night, though, he sat in the doorway, unmoving. His amber eyes flicked past her, past the food, toward the hallway where Anna had disappeared moments before. Koda, Maya coaxed softly, tapping the edge of the bowl. Come on, boy. Dinner. He didn't budge. Instead, his ears pricked at the faint sound of Anna's laughter drifting from her bedroom. His body leaned in that direction, as if tethered by something invisible. Maya frowned, confusion pinching her brow. She thought, maybe he wasn't hungry. She left the bowl and went back to her laptop, convincing herself it was nothing. But by the next morning, the food was untouched. This time she watched closely, leaning against the counter as she set the bowl down. "Come on, Coda," she urged, her voice firmer. He padded in, slow and hesitant, sniffing at the bowl. For a moment, she thought he might give in. But his gaze lifted, not to her, not to the food, but to the hallway again. Then he turned, padded away, and lay down by Anna's door with a heavy sigh. Maya's stomach tightened. At breakfast, she tried an experiment. "Anna," she called, spooning cereal into her daughter's bowl. "Can you sit with Coda while he eats?" Anna skipped into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, hair a tangled crown around her head. She plopped down cross-legged on the floor beside the dog's bowl, patting Coda's side. "It's okay, boy. You can eat." And just like that, he did. He lowered his head and began eating, crunching each bite with measured calm, though his eyes flicked to Anna between mouthfuls, as if her presence alone unlocked his appetite. Maya's heart thudded. Relief mingled with dread. It became a pattern. Morning and night, Coda refused food unless Anna was sitting within arm's reach. If Maya tried to feed him while Anna was at school, he ignored the bowl completely. He would lie in the hallway instead, head on his paws, eyes hollow and distant. The weight of it pressed heavily on Maya. She found herself standing at the kitchen sink, watching him, her chest aching with guilt. "What's happening to you?" she whispered one night, her voice breaking in the quiet. "Why are you doing this?" She couldn't shake the image of his eyes. They weren't defiant or stubborn. They were hollow in a way that frightened her, like grief already settling in, as though he were mourning something that hadn't yet happened. The guilt clawed deeper each time she looked at Anna. Her daughter was bright, playful, and seemingly healthy. She laughed at cartoons, sang to herself while building towers of blocks, scribbled wild drawings that filled the fridge. And yet, Coda's insistence wrapped every moment in shadow. Maya began to dread mealtimes. Each clatter of kibble into the bowl was a test she already knew the answer to. Each refusal felt like a message she didn't want to decode. One evening, after another failed attempt, Maya knelt beside him, pressing her forehead briefly against his fur. His body was warm, steady, but unmoving. "You're scaring me," she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. He blinked slowly, then turned his gaze back to the hallway where Anna slept. That night, she lay awake listening to the faint creak of the floorboards as Coda shifted outside Anna's door. Her mind churned with rational explanations, separation anxiety, habit, maybe even a touch of old age. But each one rang hollow in her chest, because she couldn't deny the truth of what she saw in his eyes. It wasn't stubbornness, it was sorrowful, and it was growing. The clink of silverware against plates filled the dining room, a rhythm as ordinary as the evening lights slanting across the table. Pasta steamed in bowls, garlic bread cooling in a basket at the center. Anna twirled noodles with all the clumsy concentration of a 6-year-old, lips pursed, cheeks flushed. Across from her, Coda lay on the floor, his head resting between his paws. His eyes were fixed, unwavering, on the little girl's every movement. Maya tried to ignore it. She cut her own portion into neat bites, sipping from her water glass, her smile stretched thin. This was their family ritual, dinner together, a fragile semblance of normalcy after long days. She wanted to preserve that bubble, to keep Anna's world unburdened. Still, the weight of Coda's gaze pressed into the edges of her vision. He wasn't resting. He was guarding. His ears twitched each time Anna shifted in her seat. His chest rose and fell in a measured cadence, yet his eyes never softened. Anna giggled suddenly, catching the intensity herself. She dropped her fork, leaned down, and reached under the table to pat his head. "Mommy," she said between giggles, "Koda's like my bodyguard. He doesn't even blink." Maya forced a laugh, the sound fragile. "I know. He takes his job very seriously, doesn't he?" She reached over to ruffle Anna's hair, masking the tremor in her hand. Anna grinned wide, delighted by the idea. "He follows me everywhere. Even when I go to the bathroom, he waits outside like a soldier." "Maybe he thinks you're a princess," Maya teased lightly, twirling her fork. "And every princess needs a knight." The words hung in the air, playful on the surface. But beneath the joke, Maya felt her stomach knot tighter. Because it didn't feel like play. It felt like duty, unyielding, desperate, as if Koda believed a threat lurked in every shadow. Anna, blissfully unaware, leaned over and whispered loudly to Koda, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe too." The dog blinked slowly, his eyes reflecting the lamp's glow. Maya's smile faltered. She placed her fork down carefully, her appetite gone. She wanted to believe this was normal, just a loyal dog being protective. Children adored such things. But deep inside, the mother in her bristled. The instincts she tried to bury beneath logic kept rising, whispering louder with every passing day. What if it isn't just loyalty? Dinner carried on, Anna chattering about school projects, a new song she wanted to learn. Maya nodded at the right moments, but her mind drifted, circling the same thought. Koda had changed. His refusal to eat without Anna near. He whines at closed doors. His hollow eyes, each detail pressed against her like pieces of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. When the meal ended, Anna hopped down from her chair, tugging Koda by the collar. "Come on, boy. Let's go play." The dog rose instantly, obedient not to her command, but to her presence itself. He followed her into the living room without hesitation. Maya lingered at the table, staring at the empty plates, her hands clenched in her lap. She tried to laugh at herself, muttering under her breath, "You're overreacting. Dogs get attached. It's nothing." But even as she said it, her body betrayed her. Her pulse quickened, her throat tightened, her chest ached with something she couldn't name. That night, after Anna had fallen asleep and the house settled into silence, Maya stood in the doorway of her daughter's room. The lamplight glowed softly, casting shadows across the walls. Anna lay curled in her blankets, a faint smile on her lips, her breathing steady and light. And there, pressed against the bed frame, Koda remained. His body was still, but his eyes were wide open, unblinking, locked on the same spot as always. Her daughter. Maya's hand tightened around the doorframe until her knuckles whitened. She whispered quietly, her voice trembling despite herself, "What are you trying to tell me?" There was no answer. Only the steady, unyielding gaze of a dog who seemed to know something she could not. The third evening, without change, pressed down on the house, like a weight no one wanted to name. Maya had filled Koda's bowl hours ago, pouring the kibble slowly as though the sound itself might coax him. The food lay untouched, the smell already beginning to stale. She had tried everything, kneeling beside him, stroking his fur, even dropping a treat at his paws, but nothing stirred him. Now he sat motionless on the rug in the hallway, body slumped, head lowered between his shoulders. His ears drooped, his breathing shallow, the rise and fall of his chest almost imperceptible. His eyes, those amber eyes that once carried the sharpness of a sentinel, were dulled, hollowed into something that looked alarmingly like grief. Anna had skipped into the living room earlier, crayons in hand, asking him to join her game. "Come on, Coda," she'd chirped, tugging at his ear. But the dog hadn't moved. He simply watched her, eyes filled with something Anna could not interpret. She frowned, then shrugged, returning to her coloring. To her, it was only a sleepy dog. To Maya, it was something far heavier. The silence gnawed at her. She sat cross-legged on the floor across from him, the untouched bowl between them. "Coda," she whispered, her voice fraying. "Please, eat." He blinked once, slow, as if every movement cost him something. His gaze shifted past her, toward the closed door of Anna's room, then back again. Maya pressed her palm against the floor, grounding herself. She could feel the air trembling between them, heavy with unspoken urgency. She had seen animals suffer before, wounds, sickness, the dulling of life at its end. But this was different. This wasn't the body failing. This was the spirit unraveling, tethered to something only he seemed to sense. Her throat tightened. "You look at me like you know something I don't," she said, her words trembling into the quiet. "And I can't take it anymore." Coda did not stir. He remained anchored, his body language one of quiet surrender. Yet his eyes, fading though they were, held something that pierced through her. Sorrow so deep, it felt human. For a moment, Maya saw herself reflected in them. Her own fear mirrored back, stripped of pretense. She thought of all the times she had laughed it off and told Anna that Coda was just being silly, a bodyguard. She thought of the jokes, the forced smiles at dinner, the nights she convinced herself logic was stronger than instinct. But here, staring at him now, she knew the truth. This wasn't silliness. This wasn't a quirk. It was a plea. Silent, desperate, unrelenting. Her chest burned with guilt. She had dismissed him, doubted him, forced him away from Anna when his whole being fought against it. And still, he stayed, breaking piece by piece under the weight of what he couldn't say. Her eyes blurred with tears. She reached forward, resting her hand gently against his head. His fur was warm beneath her palm, but he didn't lean into her touch the way he used to. He simply sat there, absorbing it, his gaze still fixed on the invisible thread that bound him to the child behind that door. A sob rose in her throat, jagged and raw. "I don't know what you're trying to tell me," she whispered, "but I hear you. I hear you now." Coda's ears flicked at the sound of her voice, though his body remained still. The faintest whine escaped his throat, so soft it was almost swallowed by the silence. But to Maya, it was enough. It was confirmation. Something was wrong. She wiped her face with trembling fingers and stood, her knees weak. A decision coalesced inside her, sudden yet certain. She could no longer afford to rationalize or dismiss. Her instincts, sharpened by motherhood, finally aligned with the dog's silent alarm. Tomorrow, she will take action. She glanced once more at Coda, her voice steadier now, though her heart raced. "I promise you, I won't ignore this anymore." The dog blinked, slow and tired, but his gaze never left her. It was as if he had been waiting for those words. Maya turned toward Anna's room, hand resting briefly on the doorknob. Through the wood came the faint sound of her daughter's breathing, steady and light. Safe, for now. But the unease in Maya's chest told her safety was fragile, a thread fraying at the edges. She looked back at Coda, who hadn't moved an inch. His stillness was not resignation anymore. It was watchfulness, sharpened by hope that she had finally understood. That night, long after the house had gone quiet, Maya sat awake in her bed, her decision echoing through her mind. No more dismissing, no more pretending. If Koda's plea carried grief, then hers would carry resolve. And as dawn crept through the blinds, she rose with a clarity that burned in her veins. It was time to seek answers, no matter what they might be. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and warm fur, a sterile blend that instantly unsettled Maya. She pushed the glass door open with one hand, the leash gripped tightly in the other. Koda padded in beside her, his movements heavy, deliberate, as if each step dragged a weight invisible to everyone but him. The waiting room was quiet for a Saturday morning. A woman with a terrier sat flipping through a dog-eared magazine. A boy whispered softly to his rabbit in a carrier on his lap. The receptionist glanced up, offered a polite smile, and then let her gaze linger on Koda. There was something in the dog's bearing that drew attention. His sheer size, the disciplined way he carried himself, even now in his state of weariness. He wasn't a pet that people cooked at. He was something else, something that demanded respect. Maya guided him toward a chair, but Koda didn't sit beside her. He lowered himself to the tile floor instead, head resting between his paws, eyes distant. His amber gaze, once sharp and alert, had dulled to a hollow sheen. The sight tore at Maya, and guilt rose in her chest like a tide. She leaned down, her hand brushing through the coarse fur at his neck. "I'm sorry, boy," she whispered. "I should have brought you sooner." When the door finally opened and a voice called, "Koda?" She rose too quickly, nearly tripping over the leash. The terrier in the waiting room barked once, startled, before being shushed. Dr. Navarro was a tall man in his 50s, his face lined but calm, his voice carrying a steady warmth. He crouched slightly as they entered the exam room, offering Koda the back of his hand to sniff. The dog gave it a cursory glance before lowering his head again, uninterested. "That's unusual," Navarro murmured, not unkindly. He gestured for Maya to help guide Koda onto the padded table, but the shepherd resisted, his body sagging with refusal. Instead, Navarro knelt right there on the floor beside him. "That's fine," he said. "We'll work here." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Maya sat stiffly on the edge of a chair, wringing her hands in her lap, watching every movement. Navarro's touch was gentle, practiced, fingers probing along Koda's ribs, checking his gums, lifting each paw to examine pads and nails. He listened with a stethoscope, his brow furrowed in concentration. Koda tolerated it all silently, offering no resistance, only the occasional flick of an ear when Navarro pressed too firmly. After several long minutes, Navarro sat back on his heels with a quiet sigh. "Physically, he's sound," he said. "No fever, no pain response, no sign of infection or injury." His eyes softened, meeting Maya's. "But he's shutting down." Maya blinked. "Shutting down?" The vet nodded. "Emotionally, psychologically. He's malnourished because he's refusing to eat. His vitals are stable now, but prolonged stress can spiral quickly in dogs, especially one like him. He's fixated." Maya swallowed hard, her fingers tightening together. "On Anna," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Navarro tilted his head. "Anna? My daughter." Her voice cracked slightly. "He won't leave her side. He follows her everywhere, sits at her door all night, and when I tried to separate them..." Her throat closed. She forced the words out anyway. He howled, like I'd broken him. Navarro studied her for a long moment, then glanced back at Coda. The shepherd's eyes had shifted again toward the door, toward the hallway where Anna was not, but might as well have been. "This isn't separation anxiety," Navarro said quietly. "Not in the usual sense." He reached out, resting a steady hand on the dog's shoulder. Dogs like him, working dogs, trained canines, carry instincts most of us don't understand. They sense changes, sometimes subtle, sometimes chemical. Illness, imbalance, even danger. Maya's heart stuttered. "You're saying—" "I'm not saying anything definitive," Navarro interrupted gently. "But I've seen cases where dogs fixated like this. One pawed at the same mole on his owner's arm until it was biopsied. Malignant melanoma. Another refused to leave a woman's side. Turned out she had a thyroid issue no one had caught yet." Maya's breath caught, her hands trembling. "You think something's wrong with Anna?" Navarro's eyes met hers with quiet gravity. "I think he believes something is—" "And whether or not we understand it, he's trying to tell you, dogs don't obsess like this without cause, especially not one like him." For a long moment, Maya couldn't move. Her chest felt crushed between fear and disbelief. She stared at Coda, at the sorrow etched into his stillness, the way his gaze clung to the absence of her daughter, and something inside her broke. Tears stung her eyes. She whispered, "I should have listened sooner." Navarro shook his head gently. "You're listening now. That's what matters." He rose slowly, dusting off his hands. "My advice, take her in for a full checkup. Don't wait. If he's wrong, then you'll have peace of mind. If he's right—" His voice trailed off, but the weight of it filled the room. Maya nodded, unable to speak. She reached down to stroke Coda's fur again, her fingers trembling against the coarse warmth. His ears flicked at her touch, but his eyes never softened. They remained fixed on the invisible tether that bound him to her daughter. In that sterile room, with the smell of antiseptic heavy in the air, Maya finally understood. Coda was not broken. He was warning her, and she could no longer afford to ignore him. Dr. Navarro stayed crouched on the floor beside Coda, his hand resting lightly on the shepherd's shoulder, as if grounding the weight of the room through touch. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the sterile brightness making every shadow sharp, every silence louder. Maya sat frozen in the chair, her hands clenched together in her lap. Her throat was dry, but she forced herself to speak. "You said, he's fixated, that he might be sensing something. What exactly do you mean?" Navarro drew in a slow breath, his gaze thoughtful. "Dogs like Coda aren't just companions. They're built to notice things we can't. A working dog's nose has 300 million scent receptors. Ours, barely 5 million. To them, every breath of air carries information. Changes in hormones, pheromones, even trace chemicals released by disease." He paused, giving her a moment to take it in. "There are documented cases," he continued gently. "Dogs alert their owners to seizures minutes before they happen, sniffing out infections when doctors missed them, and yes, even detecting cancers, long before symptoms showed." The words settled like stones in Maya's chest. She shook her head, almost reflexively. "But he's just licking her stomach, guarding her. That doesn't mean—" "I'm not saying it does," Navarro interrupted softly. His voice was calm, steady, the kind of tone that could hold panic at bay. "But consistency matters. Dogs don't fixate on the same area of the body without reason. If he's drawn to your daughter's abdomen again and again, If he refuses to leave her side, if he's shutting down from stress, then he's telling you something he can't put into words. Maya's heart pounded. She saw again the image burned into her memory. Coda bent over Anna's small frame, licking the same spot on her belly with deliberate patience, eyes unwavering. She had tried to laugh it off then, to dismiss it as affection. Now the memory made her skin prickle. Navarro's gaze softened as he studied her face. I've worked with animals for 30 years. I've seen loyalty, stubbornness, even grief. But what I see here... He glanced at Coda, lying still, eyes drifting once more to the exam room door, as if Anna might appear. This is different. This is a warning. Maya's breath caught, a sharp ache tightening her chest. So what do I do? She whispered. You take her in, Navarro said simply. Get a full checkup, especially focused on the abdomen. Blood work, imaging if possible. If nothing shows up, then you'll have peace of mind. If something is there... His pause was brief but heavy. You'll have caught it sooner than most. Her mind reeled. She thought of Anna's laughter, her messy drawings taped to the fridge, the way her hair tangled every morning. She thought of the times Anna had rubbed her stomach absent-mindedly, murmuring about a funny feeling, and how easily Maya had brushed it aside. A cold wave of guilt washed over her. I thought it was just a phase, she whispered. Just Coda being protective. Her voice cracked. I even shut him out once. He cried like I'd broken him. Navarro's expression was kind, but firm. He wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for her. Maya pressed a trembling hand to her forehead, trying to steady herself. The engineer in her screamed for logic, for proof, for data. But the mother in her, the part that woke at the faintest sound from Anna's room, that read the flicker of unease in her dog's eyes, knew instinct had already given her the answer. Navarro rose slowly, brushing off his knees. I know this is frightening, but you're lucky. Not every child has a sentinel like him. Whatever this is, he's giving you a chance to act before it's too late. Maya looked at Coda. His body was still heavy with exhaustion, but his gaze had sharpened at the sound of her daughter's name. His loyalty was etched into every line of his posture, every beat of his heart. He had been shouting in silence for weeks, and only now was she finally listening. Her voice trembled, but carried a newfound resolve. I'll take her. First thing tomorrow. Navarro nodded. Good. And Maya, don't doubt what you've seen. Sometimes the bond between a dog and a child is sharper than any test. Trust it. The words lingered as Maya rose, looping the leash loosely around her wrist. Coda stood slowly, his frame towering, though his movements were deliberate, weary. Still his eyes were fixed forward, toward the hallway that led back to the waiting room, back to Anna. Maya's chest tightened as she whispered, almost to herself, He never stopped trying to tell me. As they left the sterile brightness of the exam room, the weight of Navarro's warning pressed deeper into her bones. Tomorrow, the hospital. Tomorrow, the truth. And tonight, she thought, glancing at Coda beside her, she would not take her eyes off either of them. The glass door of the clinic swung shut behind her with a hollow thud, leaving Maya in the late afternoon air. The parking lot shimmered under the low sun, heat rising from the asphalt, yet she felt a chill in her bones that no warmth could touch. Her hands shook as she unlocked the car. Coda followed without hesitation, his movements steady, disciplined as always, but weighted by something she couldn't name. When she opened the back door, he climbed in, settling onto the seat with a heavy exhale. His amber eyes, dulled by weariness, yet sharpened by purpose, locked on the road ahead, as if he already knew where they were going. Maya slid into the driver's seat and gripped the wheel. Her knuckles whitened. She drew a shaky breath, the words of Dr. Navarro still echoing in her mind. Dogs don't fixate without reason. He's trying to tell you something he can't put into words. The engine roared to life, breaking the heavy silence, but Maya could still hear her pulse drumming in her ears. She pulled out of the lot slowly, her foot tentative on the pedal. Each streetlight, each stop sign blurred at the edges of her vision. Her focus narrowed to the thought that clung to her chest. What if Anna isn't safe? What if something is wrong? And I've ignored it. Her throat tightened. She could almost see her daughter's smile in the rearview mirror, her small hands waving a crayon, her voice insisting Coda was her guard dragon. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. This wasn't the time to fall apart. From the back seat came a faint sound, the shift of Coda's paws against the upholstery. She glanced in the mirror. He was sitting upright now, his ears pricked, his eyes fixed forward, not on her, but on the horizon. His body was taut, as if waiting, urging. It struck her with force. He wasn't tired anymore. The moment they had left the clinic, his lethargy had given way to vigilance. It was as if, now that she finally understood, he would not let her falter. Her grip on the wheel steadied. The city passed in fragments. A child tugging at her mother's sleeve outside a bakery. A man hosing down the sidewalk. A pair of teenagers laughing too loudly as they crossed the street. Life, ordinary and oblivious, unfolded around her. And here she was, a single mother with trembling hands, a loyal dog in her back seat, and a gnawing fear that her daughter's laughter was hanging by a thread she could barely hold on to. Her mind replayed every subtle sign she had dismissed. The way Anna sometimes rubbed her stomach, the faint wince before she smoothed it over with a smile, the tiredness she had chalked up to school, and always, Coda's eyes, fixed on that same place, unwavering. She whispered into the car's hum, almost afraid of her own voice. "You knew before I did, didn't you?" In the mirror, Coda's gaze met hers briefly, steady, unblinking, before flicking forward again. He didn't need words. His silence carried the weight of confirmation. A tear slid down her cheek, caught in the trembling corner of her mouth. For weeks, she had fought her instincts, clung to logic, told herself she was imagining things. But now, there was no denying the truth. Not when her dog had nearly broken himself trying to make her listen. Fear swelled inside her, sharp and suffocating. But beneath it, something else stirred, something harder, clearer. Determination. The road stretched before her, glowing orange in the sinking sun. She pressed the accelerator a little more firmly, her spine straightening. "We'll go," she said, her voice low but certain. "Tomorrow morning, first thing. I'll get her checked. No more waiting." Coda shifted again, lying down at last, his body pressed against the seat as if relieved by her words. His eyes drifted shut, but his ears twitched at every passing sound, alert even in rest. Maya drove on, the trembling in her hands slowly subsiding. The fear hadn't left. She doubted it ever would until she knew the truth. But it had reshaped itself into resolve. At a red light, she exhaled shakily, glancing once more into the rearview mirror. Her reflection was pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but behind her, Coda sat like a sentinel carved into the fading light. She realized then that she was not alone in this. He had carried the weight until she was ready. Now, she would carry it with him. The light turned green. The car moved forward. By the time they pulled into the driveway, dusk had settled, painting the house in muted blues. Maya shut off the engine, sitting for a moment in the heavy quiet. Her heart still pounded, but it beat with purpose now. She turned slightly, meeting Coda's gaze again. "Thank you," she whispered. His ears flicked, and for a moment, she could have sworn his eyes softened. Together, they stepped into the house. Anna's laughter floated down the hallway, bright and innocent. For the first time in weeks, Maya didn't just hear it with love. She heard it with urgency. Tomorrow, she will act. Tomorrow, she will find the truth. And tonight, she would not let her daughter out of her sight. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and something faintly metallic, like air that had been scrubbed too clean. Maya held Anna's small hand as they walked through the automatic doors, the whoosh of glass sliding shut behind them, sounding like the end of one world and the beginning of another. The waiting room stretched wide, lined with plastic chairs that looked the same no matter which hospital you entered. White walls reflected harsh fluorescent light, making the space feel cold despite the heater humming in the corner. A television mounted high on the wall played a muted cartoon, colors flickering silently across the screen. Anna glanced around with quiet curiosity, swinging their joined hands. "It smells funny in here," she whispered. Maya forced a smile, kneeling to brush a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Hospitals always smell like this," she said lightly. "It means they're very clean." Anna nodded solemnly, accepting the explanation. Children had a way of trusting simple answers. She followed her mother to a pair of empty chairs and climbed up, her legs dangling far above the floor. Almost immediately, she began swinging them back and forth, humming softly, her shoes tapping the chair's metal legs in rhythm. Maya sat beside her, her posture stiff, hands clasped in her lap. Her eyes flicked to the intake desk, to the nurses moving briskly in and out of doors, to the hallway beyond where cold machines and unseen doctors waited. She felt her pulse in her throat. She had told herself on the drive here that she would be calm, that Anna didn't need to see her fear. But the dread coiled deep in her stomach betrayed her. Every breath felt like borrowed time, every moment a fragile illusion of normalcy, before something irrevocable shattered it. Beside her, Anna fished a crayon from her pocket, tugged a folded scrap of paper from her jacket, and began to draw on her lap. The lines were uneven with the lack of a table, but her determination was fierce. "I'm drawing Coda," she announced, her tongue peeking from the corner of her mouth as she sketched. Maya leaned closer, her heart catching at the sight of the crude figure taking shape. 4 legs, a big head, wide wings stretching out from his sides. "Wings?" Maya asked softly, her voice careful not to tremble. Anna grinned, holding up the picture. "He's my angel dog. Don't you think he looks like one?" Maya's throat closed, and she nodded quickly, blinking against the sudden sting in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "He looks exactly like one." The scrape of the reception chair pulled her back. A nurse called out another family's name. A toddler cried somewhere across the room, the sound sharp and echoing in the sterile air. Maya pressed her palm against her knee to steady herself, willing her body not to shake. She kept her smile fixed, even as the minutes dragged. Anna swung her legs and chatted about school, about the story she wanted Maya to read tonight, about how Coda was probably lying by the door at home waiting for them. Every word was a balm and a knife, innocence colliding with the heaviness in Maya's chest. When a nurse finally stepped into the room and called, "Anna Alvarez?" Maya's heart lurched. She stood quickly, smoothing her daughter's jacket. "That's us, sweetheart." Anna hopped down, still clutching her drawing. She slipped her hand into Maya's again, unafraid, her face bright with curiosity. To her, this was an adventure. To Maya, it was a precipice. As they walked toward the hallway, Maya glanced back once at the waiting room, at the empty chair where they had sat. She imagined Coda there, silent, vigilant, eyes unblinking. She carried that image with her as they stepped into the maze of white walls and machines. Her smile stretched thinner than ever, masking a dread that grew heavier with each step. Time inside hospitals never moved in a straight line. It stretched and bent, collapsing into minutes that felt like hours, hours that vanished without warning. For Maya, the world had narrowed to the sterile corridor, the antiseptic air, and the sound of Anna's small sneakers squeaking against the floor as they were led from one room to another. The tests began quietly enough. Blood drawn by a nurse with gentle hands, the cool jelly of an ultrasound pressed against Anna's belly, while cartoons played faintly on a screen in the corner. Anna, ever curious, asked questions. Why is the machine humming? Can I see my bones? Will it show Coda too? She swung her legs from the edge of the exam table, eyes wide, laughter bubbling at moments when Maya's own throat was too tight to answer. Maya forced her smile with every response. It just shows what's inside, honey. Nothing scary. Her words sounded steady, but her palms were damp, nails pressing half-moon marks into her skin. When the final scan finished, the technician's pleasant mask slipped just slightly, just enough for Maya to see something guarded in her eyes. A note was scribbled, a file handed over, a reassurance spoken in tones too careful, and then the waiting began again. Maya sat in the consultation room with Anna on her lap, the child's head resting against her chest, humming softly. The room was white, sterile, the hum of a fluorescent light above them matching the uneven rhythm of Maya's heartbeat. The door opened. A doctor entered, grey at the temples, expression calm, hands holding the thin folder that felt heavier than stone. He sat down across from them, resting the folder on the desk. Maya, he began gently, his voice practiced but kind. Thank you for bringing Anna in today. He opened the folder, eyes scanning the pages before lifting again to meet hers. We found something. Maya's chest tightened. The room tilted slightly. She pulled Anna closer without realizing it, her arms tightening protectively around the small body. What did you find? Her voice cracked, thin as paper. The doctor folded his hands. There is a cyst on one of her ovaries, small but present. The words struck like a physical blow. Maya's throat closed, her stomach lurched, and her vision blurred. She clutched Anna as if the child might slip away at that very moment. Anna, oblivious, lifted her head. What's a cyst? Maya's lips parted, but no sound came out. The doctor's voice remained calm, steady, a hand extended in reassurance. It's like a little bubble, not dangerous yet. And in Anna's case, it hasn't turned malignant. You brought her in early enough that we can treat it safely. Surgery will be scheduled soon to remove it. Relief crashed into her like a wave, colliding violently with the terror still roaring in her chest. Tears stung her eyes, hot and unstoppable. She covered her mouth with her free hand, choking on the mixture of fear and gratitude. Not malignant, early enough, safe. Words she clung to like a drowning woman clutching driftwood. She bowed her head, pressing her lips into Anna's hair, breathing in the scent of childhood shampoo, crayons, and innocence. Her daughter squirmed a little, confused by the sudden intensity of the embrace. "Mommy, am I okay?" Maya nodded quickly, her tears spilling freely now. "Yes, baby," she whispered into her ear, voice breaking. "You're going to be okay. You're safe." The doctor explained the next steps: surgery, recovery, monitoring. But his words blurred at the edges, swallowed by the pounding of her pulse. All she could hear clearly was the echo of Navarro's voice in the clinic the day before. Dogs don't fixate without reason. Coda had known. Weeks, months perhaps, before any machine, before any scan, before any human could detect it, Coda had been sounding the alarm. His refusal to eat, his vigil outside Anna's door, his sorrowful eyes fixed on the same place. He had carried the weight of this truth silently, desperately, until someone listened. And if she hadn't? Maya squeezed her eyes shut, forcing the thought away. If I hadn't listened, if I had waited longer. The idea was unbearable. Her stomach twisted, nausea rising at the edge of her throat. When the doctor stepped out, promising a surgical schedule within 24 hours, Maya remained frozen in the chair, holding Anna tightly. She could feel the warmth of her daughter's body against her own, hear the steady rhythm of her breathing, see the innocent trust in her wide eyes. Anna reached up, patting her mother's cheek, her voice soft. "Mommy, why are you crying? You said it's just a bubble." Maya laughed shakily through her tears, pressing her forehead against her daughter's. "Because I love you," she whispered. "Because I love you so much." The little girl giggled, wiping at her mother's wet cheeks with tiny fingers. "Then don't cry. Coda will be mad if you're sad." At the mention of his name, Maya's chest tightened all over again. She pictured him waiting by the front door at home, ears perked, eyes alert, knowing in the marrow of his bones that something was wrong. He had carried this secret for her, for Anna, shouldering it with a loyalty no human could rival. She closed her eyes, whispering a promise into the quiet. "I'll tell him he was right. I'll tell him he saved you." And in that moment, as fear and relief swirled together inside her, like storm clouds breaking apart, Maya knew this truth would mark her forever. Her daughter had been given a second chance at life, and it was because a silent guardian had refused to be ignored. The drive home blurred past in colors and motion, but Maya's heart was fixed in one place, on the fragile weight of what almost slipped through her fingers. By the time she carried Anna inside and closed the door behind them, the silence of the house pressed in like a wave. The only sound was the eager scratch of nails against hardwood as Coda came bounding from the hallway. His eyes went straight to Anna. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply stopped a few feet away, chest rising and falling, gaze locked on the little girl, as though waiting for confirmation. His ears tilted forward, his body taut, trembling with the gravity of something only he could measure. Anna smiled, patting her belly, as if she understood more than she should. "See, Coda? Just a bubble." Maya's throat tightened. She set her bag down, kneeling beside him. The shepherd lowered his head, pressing it into her chest with a heavy, deliberate weight. His fur was warm against her cheek, his body solid and unyielding. She wrapped her arms around him and held on, tears slipping silently down her face. "You knew," she whispered. The words trembled out, barely sound. "You knew all along." For a long moment, the three of them stayed like that. Anna leaning against Maya's side, Coda pressing into her front, their bodies forming a circle of quiet breath and unspoken truth. It was a moment no photograph could capture, no words could fully hold, the crystallization of something ancient and unbreakable. Maya had been raised to believe in science, in numbers and charts and diagnoses. And yet, here she was, undone by a creature who had no words, only eyes and silence and unyielding love. If she had dismissed him, if she had ignored those sleepless nights, those sorrowful eyes fixed on Anna, her daughter might not be here, swinging her small legs on the couch, humming softly to herself. The thought made her stomach twist. She almost lost her. The reality of it pressed down like gravity, crushing and humbling all at once. For weeks, she had walked the line without knowing, moving through ordinary days with disaster, crouched just out of sight. Every school drop-off, every laugh at the dinner table, every tiny hand tucked into hers, she might have been living those moments for the last time. Maya bent her head against Koda's neck, inhaling the warm scent of his fur. "You carried this for me," she whispered. "You carried it until I was ready to listen." Anna leaned closer, wrapping her small arms around both of them. "Koda's a hero, Mommy. He saved me." The simplicity of her words undid Maya all over again. Tears spilled freely now, not of panic, but of awe. She pulled her daughter into her lap, encircling her with one arm, while her other hand rested on Koda's broad back. Her fingers felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing, the heartbeat beneath. "Yes," Maya said, voice breaking. "He saved you. He saved us both." The room seemed to glow in the dim afternoon light. The three of them bathed in something wordless but holy. It wasn't just survival. It was love. Raw, undeserved, absolute. Maya thought back to the first day she brought Koda home, how she had questioned whether she was strong enough to care for both him and Anna after everything life had taken. He had been restless then, pacing rooms, testing boundaries, learning the rhythms of a new home. She had thought she was rescuing him, but now she saw the truth with searing clarity. He had been sent here to rescue them. Her palm pressed flat against his chest, feeling the strong thump of his heart. "I won't ever doubt you again," she whispered. "Not ever." Koda lifted his head, eyes glinting as though he understood. His gaze shifted to Anna, who had nestled against Maya's shoulder, eyelids drooping from the long day. The shepherd gave a quiet huff, a sound halfway between a sigh and a promise, then lowered himself to the floor at their feet. Maya watched him settle there, not as a pet, not even as a guardian, but as something beyond language. Family, woven into the very fabric of their survival. The bond between them had always been there, but tonight it had solidified, crystallized into something she could never deny. She rocked Anna gently, brushing strands of hair from her forehead. Relief pulsed through her veins, mingling with exhaustion, terror, and gratitude. She thought of the doctor's words. Caught early. Safe. Surgery soon. They had a path forward. There would be pain, yes, but also healing. And at the center of it all was the silent sentinel who had refused to let them walk blind into the dark. The weight of love was heavy, but it was a weight she would carry gladly, fiercely, until her last breath. And in that quiet living room, as the storm clouds of the past weeks finally began to break, Maya understood a truth that would anchor her forever. Love was not measured in words spoken or promises made. It was measured in the eyes that never looked away, in the bodies that leaned against each other when the world tilted, in the refusal to let go even when silence was the only language left. Love was here, in her arms, at her feet, breathing, alive, unbreakable. The hospital lights never dimmed. They hummed above like artificial stars, too bright, too sterile, erasing the comfort of night. Maya sat outside her daughter's room, hands clenched until her knuckles ached. Anna was asleep behind those doors, prepped for early morning surgery. Maya had kissed her forehead, whispering reassurances she barely believed, and now waited in the kind of helpless silence that makes even the strongest feel small. Her brother Daniel had insisted on coming. He sat nearby, steady but quiet. He had taken Coda outside, knowing hospital rules wouldn't bend, not even for a shepherd who had already proven himself more than human. But Coda didn't fight. He simply lowered himself to the ground at the edge of the hospital garden, his amber eyes fixed on the glowing doors through which Maya had disappeared. Nurses passed by, some pausing at the sight of the German shepherd so still, so solemn. His ears flicked at every sound, ambulances, footsteps, sliding doors, but always his gaze returned to that single point. This wasn't waiting. It was devotion carved into silence. Inside, Maya wrestled her storm. She tried reading, but words blurred. She tried praying, but thoughts fractured. Each image that came was unbearable. Her daughter's small body under blinding lights, doctors' calm voices carrying too much gravity. She pressed her palms against the window at the end of the hall, the city sprawling in lights below. Somewhere down there was Coda. Just picturing him, unyielding, faithful, steadied her. He carried the weight she could not. Hours slipped into dawn. Daniel returned briefly, smelling of cold air. "He hasn't moved," he said softly. Maya's throat tightened. "He knows." Outside, Coda lowered his head onto his paws, breath fogging in the night, eyes unblinking. If devotion had a shape, it was this: muscles aching, heart resolute, refusing to leave his post. Time stretched like glass. Maya counted the squeak of nurses' shoes, the swish of doors, anything to mark reality. Her mind swirled with memories. Anna as a newborn, impossibly small in her arms. Anna's first steps on the living room rug. Her laughter, her paint-streaked cheeks. The day she'd begged for a puppy, and how that wish brought Coda into their lives. "Please, God, not her," Maya pleaded. "Take anything else." Daniel returned with coffee, though she couldn't swallow. "She's strong," he murmured. "She'll pull through." Maya's tears brimmed. "She's just a child. She shouldn't have to be strong." But even as she said it, she remembered Anna's calm words before surgery. "It'll be okay, Mom. Coda's watching." And so she clung to that image, Coda waiting, unwavering, as her anchor. Minutes bled into hours. The doors stayed closed. Maya's mind conjured futures she couldn't let go of. Birthdays, school plays, late-night hot chocolate. Fragile visions dangling like glass above concrete. Finally, the hallway doors creaked. A figure in scrubs stepped out. Dr. Navarro. Her eyes met Maya's, carrying gravity, but not despair. "The procedure is going well," she said gently. "Your daughter is stable." Relief cracked through Maya in a sob she hadn't known she was holding. Daniel steadied her as her knees threatened to give. Hope flickered where there had been only dread. But the night wasn't over. Hours remained before it would be done. At last, after endless waiting, Dr. Navarro returned. Mask lowered now, her voice calm, weighted but merciful. The surgery went well. We removed the cyst cleanly. There were no complications. Anna is stable. The words hit like a tidal wave. Relief tore through Maya's chest. She collapsed into sobs, clutching her brother like a drowning woman. And then, from beyond the glass doors at the hospital entrance, came a sound, a soft whimper. Coda. Not a bark, not an alarm. A note of relief, trembling with release. Somehow he knew. Maya staggered toward the doors, tears streaming. She pushed into the cool night, and there he was, sitting at the base of the steps, Daniel's jacket draped over him, ears tilted forward, eyes locked on the doorway. When he saw her, he rose, tail wagging slow, cautious, as though sensing the fragility of her heart. Maya dropped to her knees on the concrete. She buried her face in his thick fur, clinging as she had clung to Daniel moments before. But this was different. This was the creature who had known before scans, before doctors, before she dared admit it, that something was wrong inside Anna. And now, he knew she was safe. "You saved her," Maya whispered, her tears soaking his coat. "You never let go." Coda pressed his muzzle to her shoulder, exhaling a warm sigh that felt like an answer. Behind her, Daniel wiped his sleeve across damp eyes. Hardened as he was, he couldn't watch without breaking. The night closed around them, traffic humming, leaves rustling. But the world had narrowed to 3 souls: a mother, a daughter healing, and the shepherd who had never left their side. Maya cupped Coda's face in her trembling hands, meeting his unwavering amber gaze. "You knew," she murmured. "From the beginning. You fought for her when I couldn't." Coda's tail swept once against the ground, his silence louder than words. Through her tears, Maya laughed, a broken sound that still carried gratitude. "I almost lost her, but I didn't. Because of you." Daniel's voice came rough from behind. He wasn't just watching. He was waiting for you to let go of the fear. Maya hugged Coda fiercely, whispering, "Your family, not just a dog. Family." And in that embrace, she felt the storm lift. Fear and helplessness still lingered, etched into her bones. But alongside them was proof. Love, in its many forms, could hold back the dark. When she finally rose, weak but steadier, she felt as though she'd stepped out of the storm into calm skies. Inside, Anna was alive, healing. Outside, Coda's vigil had carried her through the longest night. She wiped her face, looked down at him, leaning against her leg. "Come on," she whispered. "She'll want to see you first." His tail thumped once, twice. His eyes gleamed as if to say what no words could. I already knew. And for the first time in forever, Maya allowed herself to believe that everything, at least for tonight, was going to be all right. The front door creaked open, and for the first time in weeks, the house seemed to exhale. The stillness broke as though the walls themselves had been holding their breath, waiting for the sound of small footsteps. Maya guided Anna carefully over the threshold. The girl leaned against her mother, moving gingerly, her hospital wristband still snug around her thin wrist. The faint smell of antiseptic clung to her clothes, mixing with the familiar scent of home. The room didn't erupt in sound or laughter. Instead, a hush settled, reverent, tender, as though the house itself knew its missing heart had returned. And then, from the shadowed corner of the living room, Coda rose. He didn't leap forward or bark. Instead, the shepherd moved slowly, deliberately, his amber eyes locked on the fragile girl. Anna froze, tightening her grip on her mother's hand, Her lips trembled, eyes wet. "Coda," she whispered. The dog stopped before her, tall and steady. Then, almost ceremonially, he lowered his head until his muzzle brushed her knee. A nuzzle. Gentle. Certain. Anna's shoulders shook as she dropped her hand into his fur, and for the first time since surgery, a laugh slipped out. Soft, broken, but real. Coda didn't wag wildly or whine. He leaned into her hand, still and grounding, his silence saying more than joy ever could. "I never left. You're safe now." Maya's throat tightened as she watched. All the nights of sterile waiting rooms, all the mornings of fear and prayer. This moment made them worth enduring. Anna sank to her knees beside him. "Hi, boy," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his. "I missed you so much." Coda's eyes closed briefly. His restraint was remarkable. No paw, no push of impatience, just the steady weight of presence. Daniel appeared in the doorway with Anna's small bag. He stopped short, his weathered face softening at the sight. Girl and dog, reunited in silence. He set the bag down gently, unwilling to disturb what was sacred. "It feels different here," he murmured. Maya glanced at him, tears in her eyes. "It does. Lighter." Anna looked up from Coda's fur. "He's not too excited," she whispered. "It's like he knows." Maya knelt beside her. "He does know. He understands you need calm right now. He's telling you he's here, and that's enough." The girl's lip trembled. She wrapped both arms around his neck, and in that embrace, she wasn't a patient or a child tethered to machines. She was simply a little girl again, clinging to her best friend. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of relief, of gratitude, of love too deep for words. That night, Anna curled beneath her star-patterned bedspread, pale but steady, her breathing falling into the rhythm of sleep. Coda stretched long across the rug, his paws reaching toward the mattress as if to bridge the distance. His ears twitched faintly at each sigh, but he remained calm, no longer frantic. From the doorway, Maya watched. All the sterile nights of pacing hospital halls pressed against her. But here, she finally felt the shift. Coda wasn't driven by desperation anymore. His vigil had steadied into serenity. Anna murmured in her dreams, shifting slightly. Coda lifted his head, eyes warm amber in the low light. He checked, then lowered his chin again onto his paws, exhaling as though to say, "She's safe." Maya's breath hitched. For the first time in weeks, she realized she wasn't holding hers. She stepped softly into the room, kneeling beside the bed. Anna's hand dangled over the mattress, brushing Coda's fur without waking. The dog didn't move except to breathe, his chest rising in cadence with hers. Maya's tears came, soft and cleansing. She stroked Anna's hair, whispering, "You did it, boy. You kept her safe." Coda's ear twitched at her voice, though his eyes stayed closed. Much later, when the house had fallen into its deepest silence, Maya found herself awake again. She padded barefoot to Anna's room, eased the door open, and froze. Anna slept soundly, moonlight softening her fragile features. Her hand rested unconsciously against Coda's neck, fingers curled into his fur. Maya sank to the carpet beside him, unable to resist. "You saved her," she whispered, the words slipping out raw and unplanned. Coda stirred, lifting his head to meet her gaze. "You knew before I did," she said through tears. "You saw what I couldn't. You wouldn't let me ignore it. Because of you. She's still here." Her fingers trembled as she brushed his fur. "You carried her when I couldn't. You carried me too. Coda leaned subtly into her hand, not demanding thanks, only present. His tail swept once against the rug, a soft acknowledgement. Maya pressed her forehead against his neck, shoulders shaking. "You're her guardian," she whispered. "And you're mine too." For a moment, time stopped. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only mother, child, and dog, a triangle of devotion bound tighter than words. Coda nudged her arm gently with his muzzle, renewing his vow in silence. Maya drew back, face damp but lighter than it had been in months. "You can rest now," she said softly, and he did. His breathing deepened, calm and certain. His body pressed close to Anna's bed. Maya lingered, watching as Anna smiled faintly in her dreams, her hand still curled in his fur. For the first time in so long, Maya allowed herself to believe the fight was over, at least for now. She kissed her daughter's temple, then whispered one last word to Coda. "Thank you." She left quietly, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. Standing in the hallway, she exhaled fully, her chest light for the first time in years. The silence of the house was no longer heavy. It was sacred, earned through devotion, sacrifice, and love. As she slipped into her own bed at last, she carried with her a truth she would never forget. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or speak in words. Sometimes they lie curled on a rug beside a child's bed, their presence a shield stronger than steel. And that night, for the first time in weeks, Maya slept in peace, held by gratitude and by the silent vow of a guardian who had never left their side. Morning light streamed through the curtains, painting the living room in soft gold. Maya sat on the couch, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. Across the room, Anna drew quietly at the table, crayons scattered in cheerful disarray. At her feet, stretched long and steady as a shadow, was Coda. She watched him, the way his ears twitched at faint sounds, the way his eyes swept each movement. Even here, in safety, he carried himself as if the world might test him at any second. At first, Maya had thought his alertness meant unease. But she had learned. Coda wasn't restless. He was ready. Always. Her mind returned to the file an officer had once handed her. Coda's life had begun on a small farm, bred for strength and intelligence. At 8 weeks, he was taken for training, molded into more than a pet, tracking scents across fields, locating the lost, subduing suspects. By 2 years old, he wore a badge. On the streets, his reputation grew. He tracked a missing child through miles of storm-dark forest. He intercepted a knife meant for his handler. Time and again, his nose and his courage found what human eyes could not. To his unit, he was an officer. But heroes carry scars. A burglary call changed his life. A desperate suspect struck his hind leg. Though Coda survived, the injury ended his career. His handler, with a family already stretched thin, could not take him home. His file closed with a quiet note. Retired due to injury. Eligible for adoption. Maya remembered her first glimpse of him. In the shelter yard, while other dogs barked and played, Coda stood silent, posture erect, scanning. He wasn't broken. He was waiting. For the next mission, the next command, the next person who needed him. She hadn't realized then how much she and Anna needed him. Now, watching him curled near her daughter, she understood why he startled awake at sirens or paced the halls at night. These weren't quirks. They were echoes of service. And they were the instincts that had saved Anna. Anna looked up from her paper. "Mommy," she whispered, careful not to wake him. "Do you think he dreams?" Maya's gaze softened at his twitching paws. "Yes," she said. "I think he dreams of the people he's helped." Anna slid to the rug, laying a hand on his back. One amber eye opened, then closed again. "He's like a superhero," she whispered. Maya swallowed hard. "Exactly like that." That evening, after Anna slept, Maya sat by the back door with Coda. The autumn air carried the scent of leaves. She spoke softly, words meant for him alone. "You've given everything," she murmured. "Faced fear, carried burdens that weren't yours. And still, when they said you were done, you didn't stop. You found us." Coda's gaze was steady. He didn't need a badge to be a guardian. His mission had simply changed. And this one, protecting Anna, was perhaps the most important of all. Maya stroked the scar along his leg. "Rest, Coda. You don't have to prove yourself anymore." But in his eyes, she saw certainty. He would never stop. Not out of duty, but out of love. Days passed into a rhythm. Anna did her homework at the kitchen table, humming softly, while Coda lay against the cabinets, ears twitching at every creak. Maya watched him, torn between comfort and ache. He was never truly off duty. Had years of service bound him too tightly to let go? One afternoon, Anna proudly showed her a drawing, herself, her mother, and Coda. But the dog was drawn larger than both, encircled like a shield. Another page showed him with feathered wings and a crooked halo. "It's Coda," Anna explained. "But not just Coda. My guardian angel." Maya's breath caught. Anna's voice dropped to a whisper. "When I was in the hospital, I dreamed of him. He was glowing. He told me not to be afraid. And when I woke up, he was there." Maya brushed her daughter's hair back, tears stinging. "That's beautiful, honey." Coda shifted closer, pressing against Anna's side as she shaded the wings. To her, the drawings weren't fantasy. They were truth, spoken in crayon. In them, she gave shape to what words couldn't. Safety, unconditional love, a watchman who stood between her and the dark. That night, when Anna slept, Maya gathered the pages, lingering over the halo. She looked at Coda stretched before Anna's door, steady as a sentinel. "She sees you for what you are," Maya whispered. "She knows." He flicked an ear, eyes glowing faintly in the low light, as though to say, no thanks were needed. Later, on the back porch under a star-scattered sky, Maya knelt beside him. Her hand rested on his shoulder, her voice low. "She calls you her angel. And maybe she's right. Maybe that's exactly what you are." Coda blinked slowly, breathing deep, his body pressed against the house like a wall built of muscle and devotion. And as Maya leaned her forehead against his fur, she felt peace settle over her, a peace like wings, unseen yet unshakable. The coffee on Main Street smelled of roasted beans and pastries, its windows fogged from the autumn chill. Maya hadn't been there in months. Once, it had been a weekly ritual with Claire. Now, after hospitals and sleepless nights, she needed that familiar face more than ever. Claire arrived bundled in a wool coat, auburn hair tucked into a scarf. She spotted Maya immediately and pulled her into a hug. "Maya, it's so good to see you. How's Anna?" "She's better." Better than I could have hoped. Maya's voice faltered, but her eyes shone. Claire leaned closer. There's more, isn't there? Maya hesitated, then whispered, It wasn't medicine or therapy. It was Coda. The dog? Not just the dog. Maya laughed shakily. He never left her side. He knew when something was wrong, before anyone else. One night he wouldn't stop until I woke her, and when I did, he saved her. Literally saved her life. Claire's eyes glistened. You're saying he knew? Every time? Maya nodded. Anna calls him her guardian angel. And I think she's right. Claire squeezed her hand. Maya, people need to hear this. Stories like this give hope. At first, Maya resisted. It felt sacred, something to protect, but Claire's words lingered. Slowly, the story slipped out. Neighbors, school parents, whispers of the shepherd with wings. An elderly woman stopped Maya at the store. Bless that dog, she whispered. At school, a father leaned over. My son says your daughter's angel dog saved her. Is it true? Maya smiled faintly. Yes, it's true. Anna herself seemed proud of the whispers. She showed her friends drawings of Coda with wings. Children gathered around, eyes wide. What had begun as private devotion was becoming something larger. Reverence. That night, watching Coda curl at Anna's side, Maya realized Claire had been right. This wasn't just their story. It was a reminder to trust, to hope, to see love where others overlooked it. Midnight quiet filled the house. Moonlight spilled across the floor, catching the rise and fall of Coda's chest at the foot of Anna's bed. Maya sat in the doorway, her thoughts circling a single truth. How often do we ignore the warnings life gives us? She thought of the times she had silenced her instincts, convincing herself she was overreacting. Coda never second-guessed. He listened. Always. And that had saved her daughter. Maybe that's the difference, she whispered into the dark. He listens. We don't. Coda stirred, lifting his head. His amber eyes met hers, steady and calm. No words were needed. His gaze said it all. I am here. Maya thought of stories she had read, dogs pawing before heart attacks, cats meowing before fires, horses refusing unsafe barns. Humans dismissed the whispers. Animals trusted them. Perhaps Anna's survival wasn't only a miracle. It was a lesson. She knelt beside Coda, resting her hand on his fur. You remind me not to ignore what's right in front of me, not to silence the quiet warnings. Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't just from fear. They were grateful. Awe. Coda sighed, lowering his head again, but kept one eye open, guarding even in rest. Maya leaned back against the bed frame, breathing with him, realizing his gift wasn't only saving Anna. It was teaching her to live attuned, present, willing to honor the whispers instead of waiting for alarms. Loyalty, love, instinct, she whispered. You saved her. And you saved me. His tail thumped once, soft and sure. Dawn broke. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, catching Anna asleep in her bed, and Coda curled faithfully at her feet. Maya stood in the doorway, hand on the frame, heart swelling. She stepped quietly inside and lowered herself beside Coda. His eyes opened, then softened shut again in trust. She brushed her hand through his fur. You've given so much, more than I'll ever repay. Memories crowded her. His rigid stance in the hallway, the urgency that had pulled her from denial, the scars that marked his battles. How many nights had he given like this for others before them? And how many scars had no one seen? Her throat tightened. "No more," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his fur. "From now on, you'll never wonder if you matter. You'll never spend a day without knowing you're loved." Coda shifted, pressing his head into her palm. Not dramatic, but enough. "I promise you," she vowed, voice steadier now, "that for the rest of your days, this will be your home. No cages, no cold kennels, no being left behind, only love, only family." Tears stung her eyes, but they were born of love that humbled her. "You deserve peace, Coda, and I'll make sure you have it." He lifted his head, meeting her gaze. There was no doubt in his eyes, only trust. He had never asked for a vow, but perhaps that was why it mattered all the more. Maya stayed like that for a long time, hand buried in his fur, Anna breathing steadily beside them. Outside, birds stirred in the trees. She pressed a kiss to his head. "We're your family now. Always." Coda's tail thumped once against the floor, sealing the vow. Maya rose at last, adjusting Anna's blanket, looking back at them, child and guardian, protector and protected. The promise wasn't just hers. It was theirs, bound by the silent thread of loyalty and love that had carried them through the darkest night and would carry them still. And in that fragile dawn, for the first time in years, Maya felt certainty. Whatever storms might come, Coda would never face them alone, because she had made a promise, and she would keep it. The house was wrapped in night silence, the moon casting silver across the wooden floor. Anna slept soundly, her breathing soft beneath the blankets. At the foot of her bed lay Coda, a shadow in the moonlight, resting, yet always watchful. Maya lingered in the doorway, her hand on the frame. Her daughter was safe, her protector close by. Coda's amber eyes met hers, calm and steady, as if to say, "I've got this." With a whisper of gratitude, she left them to the night. Hours stretched on, but Coda did not waver. Every creak of the house, every distant sound, kept his instincts alert. Once trained for commands and danger, those instincts now had a different purpose. This wasn't duty anymore. It was love. When Anna stirred, her hand slipped from the blanket. Without hesitation, Coda pressed his nose into her palm. Even in sleep, she seemed to know he was there, her fingers relaxing into invisible comfort. For a long time, he stayed like that, his breath rising and falling with hers, two rhythms bound as one. Shadows shifted with the moon, but Coda remained constant. Memories of the past flickered. Gunpowder, shouts, long nights on patrol. But with Anna's gentle breathing beside him, the edges softened. He was no longer a soldier. He was guarding peace. A sudden rattle of branches snapped him fully awake. Muscles tense. He scanned the room, ears pricked, until silence settled again. Only then did he rest his head back down, eyes still sharp. That was his burden, and his gift. As dawn crept in, Coda's dreams were not of chaos, but of Anna. Her laughter, her drawings of him with angel wings, her arms wrapped around his neck. She had given him something no command ever had, a new identity, not a canine, not a weapon, just a guardian, timeless and trusted. When the morning light reached the room, Anna shifted and brushed her hand against his fur. His eyes opened, steady and unmovable. His unspoken promise was clear. As long as he lived, he would not leave her side. Later, Maya sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling in her hands. Then came the sound. Anna's laughter, blending with Coda's bark. She closed her eyes, letting it sink in. It wasn't just noise. It was proof. Proof of healing, of joy returning to their home. Coda had once been a guest, a responsibility. Now, he was something deeper, an invisible thread binding them together. When Maya peeked into Anna's room, her heart swelled. Crayons were scattered across the floor as Anna drew another picture of her guardian angel. Coda lay beside her, head tilted as if studying the drawing himself. She whispered secrets into his ear, and he answered with gentle blinks, a nuzzle, quiet understanding. And maybe, Maya thought, he truly did understand. She leaned against the doorframe, her voice low, almost reverent. There are things in this world, she whispered to herself, that don't need words to be understood. It struck her then how many times she had ignored subtle signals in her life, signs from people, from her own instincts, even from Anna. She had been too busy, too guarded, too human. But Coda never missed them. He read the silences, the pauses, the unspoken fears. And somehow, he had taught them to listen too. Later that afternoon, Maya sat with Anna on the porch, while Coda rested at their feet. The little girl leaned against her mother's side, holding one of her pictures in her lap. This one was different. 3 figures drawn in shaky but earnest lines. A little girl, her mother, and a German shepherd, with wings that stretched across the page. Maya brushed a hand through her daughter's hair and asked softly, "Why wings, sweetheart?" Anna looked up, her eyes wide with the kind of clarity only children have. "Because he doesn't need them to fly. He already carries us." The words hit Maya harder than she expected. Her throat tightened, and she had to look away toward the horizon, blinking against the sting of tears. Out of the mouths of children came truths too pure to deny. That evening, after Anna had gone to bed, Maya found herself sitting on the living room floor beside Coda. The quiet stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of gratitude, of promises, of unspoken understanding. She reached out and rested her hand gently on his thick fur. Coda didn't move, didn't stir, but his breathing slowed, steady and even, as though syncing with hers. "I used to think love was something you had to say out loud," Maya murmured. "But you've shown me it isn't. Love is in the way you stay, even when no one's watching. It's in the way you protect what matters most, without needing thanks." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "You've tied us together, Coda. Me, Anna, you. It's a bond I can't see, but I feel it every second. It's unbreakable. The invisible thread." She thought of it like this. Anna, fragile but brave, holding on to life with a child's quiet determination. Coda, scarred from his past, carrying instincts sharpened by duty, but now softened by love. And herself, broken in ways she rarely admitted, finding healing in their presence. Together, they formed a triangle of trust, each holding the other, each stronger because of the bond. As the night deepened, Maya glanced toward Anna's room, where she knew Coda would soon take up his post once again by her bedside. But before he rose, she cupped his face gently in her hands. His amber eyes locked with hers, and in that gaze, She felt the weight of everything he had carried. Battles fought, lives saved, sacrifices endured. "You don't have to carry us alone anymore," she whispered. "We're a family now. We'll carry you too." Koda's tail thumped once against the floor, slow and deliberate, as if to acknowledge the vow. And for the first time in years, Maya felt a peace she had almost forgotten was possible. Not because life had become perfect, but because she understood that perfection wasn't the goal. Connection was. Trust was. Love was. The invisible thread, woven through a child's laughter, a dog's steady watch, and a mother's promise, was what held them. It was what would continue to hold them, long after words faded, long after nights turned into mornings, long after the world outside shifted and changed. Some bonds, she realized, weren't bound by time. They were carved into the soul. That night, as she turned off the lights and let the quiet settle in, Maya whispered one final thought into the darkness. "Whatever comes, we're tied together. Always." And somewhere in the silence, she could have sworn she heard Koda's breath deepen in response, as if he understood every word. The house was quiet, wrapped in the hush of midnight. Moonlight spilled through the curtains, painting silver patterns across the living room floor. Maya sat alone on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the soft shadows that stretched and shifted with the breeze outside. It had been months since the night that changed everything, since Koda had warned them, since their lives had been spared. Yet even now, the weight of it lingered in her chest, not heavy anymore, but present, a reminder. She thought back to who she had been before Koda, a mother exhausted by fear, carrying invisible burdens, trying to shield Anna with her own fragile strength. She remembered the loneliness, the quiet despair, the silent prayers she whispered into the dark. And then she thought of who she was now, sitting here, with her daughter safe in bed and a German shepherd sprawled at her feet, his chest rising and falling in a rhythm that had become the heartbeat of their home. Koda stirred slightly, his ears twitching at some distant sound. Even in rest, he was vigilant, always listening, always guarding. His loyalty was unshakable, his presence constant. Maya leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just a dog, are you?" The words trembled out, not because she doubted him, but because she finally understood. Koda wasn't simply a pet. He wasn't even just a hero who had saved them from danger. He was more than that. Something deeper. Something no language could fully capture. To Anna, he was a protector. The one who watched over her fragile sleep, who listened to the words she didn't yet know how to speak, who turned her drawings into truth. To Maya, he was an anchor. The steady presence that pulled her back when grief threatened to drown her. The reminder that love still existed in forms she hadn't expected. The force that tethered her to hope. And to both of them, he was proof. Proof that heroes didn't always come dressed in uniforms or carrying weapons. Sometimes, the truest heroes spoke without words. Through their watchful eyes, their quiet sacrifices, their unwavering loyalty. Maya rose quietly and walked toward the hallway. She paused at Anna's bedroom door, leaning her head against the frame. The little girl was fast asleep, curled beneath her blanket, one hand resting gently on the space beside her pillow. And there, as always, Koda had placed himself, half on guard, half at peace, his body angled toward the door, as though ready to meet any threat that dared approach. The sight filled Maya's chest with a fierce, aching gratitude. She whispered softly into the dim room, words meant for both of them. "I don't know what we did to deserve you, Koda, but I promise we'll never take it for granted." Koda's ears flicked, and though he didn't open his eyes, his tail brushed once against the floor. It was enough. Back in the living room, Maya sank into her chair again. She let her mind drift through the memories of the past months. Anna's laughter, the way she had begun to draw wings on Coda, the subtle ways her daughter's courage had returned, the peace that had settled over their home like a long-awaited blessing. She thought of the invisible bond that held them all together, something beyond human understanding. And she realized with sudden clarity, this wasn't just Coda's story, it was theirs. A child, a mother, a dog. 3 lives intertwined, carrying one another through shadows into light. Tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't born of sadness. They were born of recognition, of awe for the simple, extraordinary truth that love, loyalty, and instinct could save lives. That sometimes salvation didn't come in the form of miracles written in the sky, but in the steady presence of 4 paws beside you in the dark. Maya pressed a hand to her heart and let herself breathe it in. The silence, the gratitude, the unspoken vow that had reshaped her life. Coda wasn't just a chapter in their story. He was the thread that stitched them together, the guardian who stood between them and the unknown, the reminder that even in a world filled with loss, there were still reasons to believe in goodness. She whispered into the quiet, not to herself this time, but to the universe, to anyone listening. He is more than a pet. He is family. He is our hero. And in that moment, Maya understood that no matter what the future held, days of joy, nights of fear, moments of doubt, they would face it together, bound not by words, but by something stronger, the invisible thread. Hours later, when she finally drifted toward sleep, Maya carried that truth with her. And in the stillness of the night, Coda remained where he always was, half dreamer, half sentinel, his heart beating in rhythm with theirs. For as long as he lived, they would never be alone. And perhaps, even after that, his presence would linger in the quiet spaces of their lives, in laughter, in memory, in love that never dies. Sometimes, the greatest reminders of love, loyalty, and courage come to us on 4 legs. German shepherds, like Coda, show us what it means to stand guard, to protect without hesitation, and to love without asking for anything in return. They aren't just pets. They are family, anchors in our darkest nights, and living proof that the bond between humans and animals is something sacred. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt that unspoken connection, you already know what I mean. These companions ask so little, yet give us everything. Their trust, their hearts, their lives. And in caring for them, we often find ourselves cared for in return. If you'd like to explore ways to connect even more deeply with your own dog, there's a resource I've found meaningful, a gentle guide that helps strengthen that bond. I'll leave the link here for you to look at, only if it feels right. Because at the end of the day, the greatest gift we can give them is our love, and the greatest gift they give us is reminding us what love really is.